Good morning, Council. I will call this meeting to order at 10:15. And we have no one excused from the meeting. I see, Ellen, you're on Zoom. I'll just ask that if you have anything, just don't hesitate to interrupt us. If we don't notice you would like to speak, just interrupt us at any time. And with regard to voting, I'll just ask that if you vote contrary, you just flag us on that. I think that's a reasonable approach if you're good with that, Ellen.
That sounds wonderful. If I'm voting against, I will speak. Otherwise, I will be quiet.
Well, you're welcome to speak anytime, but thank you. That sounds good.
Thank you, Arno.
Yep. We have the minutes of our January 12th meeting in our package. How would you like to handle that? Are there any errors or omissions? Or if not, any discussion from that, a motion to approve the minutes would be in order. Lynette,
motion
please.
To approve the minutes.
Thank you. All in favor of that, please indicate. That is carried. Thank you. Call for post-agenda items. Are there any post-agenda items that need to be added to our agenda? Amanda?
Under function of council, the 40-mile road trip on the audio equipment for the chamber.
Okay, thank you. We'll add that. Any others? If not, then a motion to approve the agenda. Adina, all in favor that we approve the agenda as altered? Thank you. That's carried. We are to item number 6, development. Just a sec, I'm on the wrong agenda here. We just about started a do-over here. So. Question period. Are there any questions or notices of motion that we need to deal with today? Seeing none, we're up to number 7, bylaws. The bylaw 2045-23, non-residential municipal tax incentive for first reading. And there is a note there from UMAT CAO. Do you want to take us through that, please?
I will take you through it. If I can trouble Maria to pop open the bylaw itself, bylaw 2045-23, to just have it on screen here. I'm going to assume council has had a chance to read through the entire bylaw, so I won't read it word for word, but I will kind of speak at a high level what we're trying to accomplish with this non-residential municipal tax incentive and where it's coming from. Since 2015, our non-residential assessment values in the county have plummeted by $570 million. That's a result of oil and gas properties aging, so their value declining, and us not seeing really any significant growth in the non-residential assessment category. We've had a few good news stories in the county. You'll see the straw mat facility going up in Martin Industrial. We've seen some oil and gas activity happening, but the province has given those folks a free pass. So any new assets out there the last couple of years have not arrived on our assessment roll. So we're looking to grow our assessment base to maintain the great quality of life and the services that the county provides for our ratepayers. This bylaw is modeled after Wheatland County's and Lethbridge County's bylaw. That bylaw was drafted by Brownlee. I should point out that we're really at the initial stages of getting this bylaw in place. We're looking for first reading today. We're open to edits and amendments. I'm going to walk you through some of the key pieces of the bylaw itself. The province has really given municipal councils a lot of room to be creative on how you set the criteria for eligibility, how long you let the criteria last, the refund, you can defer taxes. I provided a summary of some of the comparable municipalities in the RFD, and you'll see it's kind of all over the place. Some give a rebate for 3 years, some for longer, some exclude linear, some include it in a entirely separate bylaw. What I've prepared for council gets non-residential and linear all together, but we treat the two classes a little bit different. So if we just pop into the bylaw itself and we go to 3.1 under criteria for tax incentive agreement. 3.1, I think this is an important point to put in. New developments that transition operations or relocate development from an incorporated urban municipality within the boundaries of the county will not be eligible for an exemption. So we're not trying to beggar our neighbors with the bylaw. We are trying to attract new growth, new development. 3.2E. So you'll see I've proposed a 50% rebate for non-residential properties over a period of 5 years. 5 years might be too long. This is a starting place. So just so you're clear that I'm not married to any of the dollar amounts or the thresholds, this is just a starting point for us. Some might think 5 years is too long because you're saddling the next council with a tax policy. So you could shorten it up. You can go up to 15 years under the MGA, and you can also put in a provision to renew for another 15 years. I've proposed that you give 5 years for the non-residential, and that's it, no renewal. And for the linear, you give up to 10 years, and that's it. You might want to have the door open to renew, but currently the bylaw does not offer that opportunity. So that will be something for council to consider. Do you want to provide the opportunity for folks to come back and say, hey, that was a sweet deal, can we renew that agreement? Under 3.2E, for new development in the non-residential category, I've proposed $1 million limit for, you have to have at least $1 million of improvement before we go through the administrative effort of drafting the agreement and giving you a rebate. Lethbridge County, you'll see, went lower than that, so they're a little bit more competitive at I think $500,000. For linear property, I'm proposing $50 million increase to the assessment base there, and we expect the new asset to last at least 15 years. We don't want to give you a break on your taxes if there's going to be no benefit to the community long-term. So we're looking for long-term, stable tax growth and hopefully some jobs as well. Not just construction jobs, but ongoing jobs. Moving on, we talk about how you apply for it. This bylaw gives your CAO the authority to review the applications. This would be another place that council could consider, we don't trust our CAO, or this is important enough that we want to review all these applications and say yay or nay. So you could contemplate that, and we could change that provision where all the applications come to council. It would potentially slow a process down. I think if you get the bylaw right, you can speed things up, leaving it with administration to administer. Calculation of the exemption onto item 6 in the bylaw here, 6.1. So this is a little bit of rehashing here. For non-residential, you'll get a refund of 50% for 5 years. The way I have it written, you need to pay your taxes before we give you your 50% back. So to ensure that we get taxes collected, if you don't pay your taxes by the June 15th deadline, you don't get the rebate for the year. So you need to be, if we're going to play, you need to play by the rules and make sure that you cash flow and settle your debts when they're due. For the linear property, for linear, we're not giving folks a tax break per se until the point in time that the county's non-residential tax rate goes above a certain level. So all I'm proposing that we offer our linear developers is a little bit more certainty on what their tax bill is going to look like over time. So what I've proposed here, I've given us a little bit of room for growth. Our non-residential mill rate last year was just over 9. So I'm saying, all right, well, let's give ourselves a little bit of room to grow if we need to grow. So up to 9.25. If, let's say, oil and gas assessment bottoms out, the province monkeys around with the assessment model, and we lose a whole bunch of value there, and we needed to increase our non-residential mill rate to say 10. Anybody in the linear category who we agreed to enter a tax incentive agreement with would get the refund 10 minus 9.25. So they pay a max of 9.25 for the 10 years. In all likelihood, if hundreds of millions of dollars of linear development shows up, our non-residential rate is likely to go down. So that's what is in this first draft for the linear side of things, not giving you a refund until we exceed that, but giving a developer some certainty on what their tax bill is going to look like for the next 10 years. Just for council's information, a linear property, so we're talking telecommunications, electric lines, oil and gas, so pipelines, wells, fiber optic, what am I missing? Solar. Those are all captured in the linear category. A linear property, let's say, might cost you $1 million to develop. It's assessed straight out of the gate. They get a 25% haircut with the current provincial regulations for assessment. So cost $1 million, assessed $750,000. It stays at 75% for the first 7 years, and then it slowly depreciates until it reaches 20% in year 20, if I'm remembering right, and it stays at 20% for the rest of the time. So linear currently in the province, if you're oil and gas, you're getting 100% exemption. And if you're not in oil and gas, you get a 25% haircut straight out of the gate. So there's some pretty nice incentives already for being a linear property developer in the province of Alberta. And that's why I have not proposed giving them the 50% rebate like that, the other non-residential category. Also, in the municipal scan, looking at other municipalities that have a tax incentive bylaw in place, a few have excluded linear altogether because they think linear gets a pretty sweet deal across the board. And those who do include linear, it is the same type of model where it's certainty on your tax rate for a period of time. Cardston County, for instance, will offer a 40% rebate after their mill rate exceeds a certain amount. I'm proposing that we rebate the entire amount. So I think what we have is a very competitive first draft, and I'm interested to hear what council thinks about it, because this will be your first kick at the can to make edits and see if we can end up in a place where the County of Newell's even more attractive for development than it was previously. So just to reiterate, we're at the very beginning of the process. We'll entertain council's edits. Hopefully we get first reading today. We kick it out to be advertised to the public. We want public's feedback. Stakeholders have been informed of this bylaw. I've already received some feedback from developers who have projects in the queue that are looking for certainty on their tax rate. We'd probably bring this back in a month for second reading after we've compiled all the feedback and had a chance for everybody to influence where this goes.
Thanks, Matt. And just to complete the process, if there are changes after second reading, then it will be sent back out to the public for consideration. And ultimately would come back for third reading would only be handled, second and third will only be handled together if there are no further adjustments to be made, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. Thank you. Questions, Holly?
What feedback did you get from developers?
So the developers that I spoke to would be the solar folks, and they'd like to be included in the non-residential category with a 50% rebate, because that makes the project easier to finance and get off the ground. And of course, right, if I'm a developer, I want the sweetest deal that you're offering. I indicated that I'm not interested in racing to the bottom. A lot of that development is in progress, likely to happen. And I think that's one of the biggest considerations for bylaws like this, right? What development is going to happen already anyways, and would have been added to our assessment roll without the incentive, and what development are we actually attracting? And I think that's a difficult question to answer, right? I think it's easy to look at what is currently happening as potential value that you could lose with a bylaw like this if you granted the tax exemption for development that might have happened anyways.
Thanks, Matt. Dan, and then Holly, or pardon me, Kelly.
I think I'm clear on the linear assessment exemption, that they don't get any rebate until the mill rate goes above 9.25, right? And then they get whatever above 9.25 as a rebate. But that's only for 10 years. After 10 years, they're taxed at a regular mill rate. Okay.
And I think, I mean, this is a point at which the province's holiday for oil and gas exploration and development fits in, because those new installations aren't even in our assessment for a period of time because they've been given. And maybe just explain that for our benefit too, so we understand what the impact of provincial legislation has been and when that came in.
Yeah, so to benefit from this tax incentive bylaw, you actually have to have a change in your assessed value of the property. So for those new wells that have been drilled recently and get a tax holiday, so they're not even showing up on our assessment roll yet, this bylaw is really irrelevant until that assessment shows up on our tax roll. Council could consider for some of those properties, we could explore writing a provision in that if you've had a sweet deal already, we don't need to layer on top of that. So one of the edits I'm thinking I need to write in here is we currently offer a 2.5% discount for paying your taxes on time. I'd like to get the edit in here that if you've got a tax incentive agreement, you don't get the tax incentive agreement plus the 2.5% discount. So that'll be some wording that I roll in for the second draft.
So that makes some sense. And what is the implication on these installations, like the new wells that are in place? They would never apply. This would never apply to them, because when they are coming to our assessment, they're already developed. So it's not new development. Is that how we interpret that?
If that's how council would like to interpret it, the way the bylaw is worded right now is the year in which you have an assessment increase would be the year that you could apply for the tax incentive agreement. And that's another area that I think we could change the wording. I think for developers to have certainty, we should have a line in here that you can apply for the exemption before you even develop. So they've got certainty that the tax agreement's coming, they invest. But for these wells and pipelines, if it's council's will that, you had a tax holiday for three years, whatever it was, you didn't have to pay the well drilling tax. And for the county on average, we've been around 740 some odd thousand annual average in well drilling tax. So it's not an insignificant benefit that the drillers have received.
Thanks, Matt. I think we should further discuss that. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I was thinking about an exclusion statement, clearly stated. And then the other thing you touched on, could we not have a statement in there saying number of employees that this may bring to the development? Because like a minimum, maybe, because that would also play in some circumstances, right? And benefit or not benefit the county as a whole.
Yeah, so that definitely can be part of the criteria. I thought about that as well. Vulcan County in one of their iterations, and maybe it's still in there, required 35 full-time equivalents. From administration, that's going to be a level of monitoring that might not be, it might be a frustration point for us. But if council's will is to include that, we can look at designing that in.
Just to comment on that, but 35 would be significant as opposed to 2, and it would be obvious too. So there is quite a difference.
I think, I mean, I would like to see this be fairly, not create a lot of extra monitoring. I mean, I hear what you're saying about that, so that's something to consider, I would say. But I'm wondering if, to our earlier discussion around installations that have come under the benefit of the provincial exemption. I mean, basically what we're proposing here goes further than that, because it goes out, what, 5 years or longer, right? So I'm wondering if, I mean, I don't think we want our program to disadvantage the companies that have had the advantage of the provincial legislation, but I don't think we want to pile on top of that either. So I suppose that's a fairly easy calculation that may be covered in some kind of a stipulation that offers companies to apply for it, at which time that would be assessed. Is that a reasonable approach, or is that how you typically approach that?
Yeah, like I'm thinking if you drilled a well this year, and let's say the exemption from the provincial level lasts another year, maybe that's one of the 10 years that you'd have been covered under here, like that counts towards one of the 10 years, and you get the remaining 9 kind of a thing. So we could look at some wording around that.
Sounds reasonable. Greg, please.
So as far as taxes on linear installations, are they paid after everything is completed on that development? And I think if we were to look at the number of employees, it would have to be after the development is completed, not when it's being done. I know that, you know, especially some of the solar applications, they'll employ up to 80 people probably, and keep 4 or 5 on staff. So yeah, if you know, as far as the employees go, I think that's one of the things to watch. And also, what are the incentives for solar from the provincial government and federal government right now? I do agree that they should be part of linear. I don't want to deviate from that. What incentives are there? Similar incentives for solar compared to oil and gas?
I won't have a laundry list memorized, but in terms of the provincial, the depreciation schedules, we can bring those back and compare. The depreciation I mentioned earlier was specific to solar. I'll have to confirm whether that's the same for oil and gas. I'm not clear what the federal and provincial list of incentives is, but we can look into that and get a list for council.
Holly, please.
What was the reason you went for linear of 50 million? I see Vulcan has 100 million.
Because Vulcan has 100 million. And really, like, I think you've got the benefit of being a county who's a little late to the game on the tax incentive bylaw. And I know there's a certain level of competitiveness around the table. And I think if we're going to do a tax incentive bylaw, let's be aggressive about it, as aggressive as we can be without being irresponsible. The county's in a really good fiscal position right now. We have seen that decline, you know, 570 million in assessment. That's $5 million annually that we're not collecting. We talk about the paving plan, bridges, priorities for pathways. A lot of those things would be built. Like $5 million a year over a number of years, you do a lot for your community, kind of a thing, right? So we want to invite some new development without putting ourselves in a bad spot.
Thank you. Neil, please.
Yeah, I just had two minor points as you went through that. Where you didn't put in an automatic 5-year renewal on those 30-year deals, is it maybe kind of wise to actually have a renewal clause written into them?
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Like, if you provide certainty for folks, it's done. They know what to bank on. Leaving the door open is, I think, good for future councils and administration. You've got the option to renew it. But I think once you've landed the development, if the incentive was enough to attract it, and you don't, like that was enough to attract it, you don't need to renew it.
I was more thinking of like the landfill, where we've got it coming on 25-year-old agreement that's never been renewed. If that had been looked at, you wouldn't be going through some of the problems you have right now. And the other thing that I had was, I think that million is maybe too high, because $500,000 can get you, you know, not a bad little business. Not everybody can come up with $1 million right off the pop, particularly like crypto and those kind of things. So I think your million is maybe a little high, and 500,000 would fit the bill better.
Okay, thanks. Any comments, Matt?
Yeah, I think the intent of the bylaw is to attract new development. Once you've attracted the new development, the bylaw's met its intent, kind of a thing. So that's where you could consider keeping the door closed on a renewal clause. But if council wants the renewal clause in there, I mean, the ones I've seen say may renew. So it doesn't obligate you to renew, but if you want the door open and folks to put applications in and it to be reviewed, it's possible.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Dan?
I would, I think if there's going to be a renewal process, maybe one where it may be renewed at council's discretion. That way, it's going to be a new council at that point, and they can look back and say, okay, you've done this for 5 years. Convince us you need another tax break to keep it going. And if there's going to be any kind of renewal process, it'd be nice to see it that way.
That works. I think that fits with what basically the proposal is that when we put this out here, this is quick and fairly nimble, because the CAO can approve these without council approval, but the renewal would come back to council, and I think that's all. We can easily stipulate that in the bylaw, right? Greg, please.
Yeah, I like that. The renewal on the renewal of the agreement, for sure. I like that idea. To Neil's point of the 500,000, I was thinking about that. You know, $1 million, we want to attract businesses that are going to be here for a long time, you know, and that have put a significant amount, and really $1 million isn't that much development. You put up a building, you put up any kind of equipment, and any kind of long-term type of business is what we're trying to attract. 500,000, I don't know, Neil, if if that's high enough. I do like the million, but you know, even some of these crypto operations, you know, I'm thinking about the one out in Tilly, that's well over $1 million project, I'm sure, but I don't know that for sure.
Jeff Bezos started in his parents' garage.
Yeah, I do agree that, but are we attracting that, or are we attracting?
I don't, $1 million is still $1 million. $500,000 is still $500,000. Everybody starts somewhere, and you never know where they're going to go. So, yeah, like you say, I don't know. I don't like eliminating somebody because $500,000 is still $500,000.
Okay, at this point, it's $1 million. I mean, we have opportunity to change that for second reading, and that's your proposal. I mean, the discussion that we're having today will impact the changes we make between first and second reading typically. Well, alternatively, we can make those any changes we want to prior to first reading too, which you can edit in and are prepared to do today if we want those. So, and I guess the way to deal with this, we have the script in front of us, or the proposed changes in front of us. If we want to make changes, that will need to be done by motion of council. So just so we understand what our process is here today, we're free to make proposed changes today, or we can revisit it after first reading at your wish. Dan, please.
Okay, so with the $1 million, I'm kind of in between on that one. Can't even build a fire hall for less than 1.5 million, so it doesn't take long to get to $1 million. But let's say there's a business that's coming in that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, but it's going to bring a lot to the county. How does that tax? Is it just on buildings, or is it on contents? Let's say they just need a plain building to store the things that they're renting out, kind of a deal. So the storage is only a $100,000 thing, but they've got $1.5 million worth of stored goods in there that they're using. Are we taxing the buildings or contents?
Property tax assessment, correct? Property tax assessment.
So then in that case, yeah, there could be a good case made for $1 million's way too high. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards Neil on that one. But then again, it doesn't take long to get to $1 million.
Any further discussion? Lynette, please.
Just another point to clarify, I guess. If it was already a building that was bought here and they would have to do $1 million worth of improvements to it to be considered under this incentive as well. Okay.
Kelly, please.
So what if we went in between? We've got Lethbridge County at 500,000. We've got our proposal at $1 million. Wheatlands at 10 million. What if we went 750,000 worth of development improvements to this bylaw, with an addition to state employee numbers? You don't like that? No. Okay. I get your vibe. I was just trying to protect the certain situations where there are no employees. But, okay, I'll throw out 750,000 edit to the bylaw. That's my motion.
As a threshold.
Mm-hmm.
Further discussion?
Instead of the million.
Okay. Holly, please.
What if it was 750,000 and there must be employees, like that there's at least somebody? Does that help, Kelly?
Matt?
Yeah, on the employee piece, I'll just say that's going to require follow-up like each year, right? So then administration's going to say, well, we need to see what you filed with CRA for your T4s or some audit process. And I'm not sure that it's worth the rub. If you've got the assessment value, we sure hope there's jobs attached to it, but administratively, I don't think you want to spend the time and effort chasing that accountability back.
We are, okay, Neil and then Greg.
Yeah, I'm not hung up on the employees because one guy making $1 million is probably better than 10 making 50,000. It's, you get the money out in the community. That's the objective, and how they do it is really their own business.
Great. Thanks, Neil. Greg?
And it is hard to classify employees. You know, a president of a company, an owner is an employee under a corporation. So whether they're actually actively working in the business or not, how do we classify what an employee is? Because owners become employees. So I think it would be difficult, like what Matt says, to classify what our threshold is for employees.
And just for clarity, that's not part of my motion.
No, we didn't take that in there. And I think we need to remind ourselves too that it is property assessment that we tax, and you know, there's an underlying assumption that the people come with it, but they provide a whole nother level of investment, either inside or outside our area of jurisdiction. So that is what it is. And the other thing that I was just going to clarify for our understanding, I expect we see that this is not agricultural activity. Value added activity would be included, but not primary agriculture. Thanks. Holly?
My question was entirely different. I think the application fee was $1,500. So I was curious how much of a time it would be for staff to get this agreement going.
I'm not sure. So in setting that amount, I referenced our peers, and they range from $500 to a couple $1,000 kind of a thing. So I kind of went middle of the road. As we develop the application process and go through a few of these, our experience will inform any future potential amendments to that rate, because we want to make sure we recover a little bit. I don't think we want to make it onerous for an applicant, but there should be, you know, they need to have a commitment, and you hit them for $1,500. That'll cover a good chunk of hours anyways for admin time.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
So with that, in this bylaw, it says the non-refundable application fee of $1,500. Could we add somewhere in there that it would be as per schedule of fees? And then we could change it easily if we need to. And the other question I had was, so have you calculated out the amount that would be repaid over the 3 years at 50% with $1 million investment or a improvement assessment? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had an example in there. So financial impact. The financial impact of the tax incentive for non-residential property, excluding linear, using our 2022 non-residential rate of 9 and change would be approximately $4,520 per year, or $22,600 over 5 years per $1 million of new development.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We have a motion on the floor that the threshold be moved to $750,000 in this prior to first reading. Are you ready for the question? Greg, you've got it.
Just wondering, you know, I'd like to add in that the idea or that it is offered up for renewal after 5 years on discretion of council so I'm just wondering if that's would be added to the motion or would be a separate motion.
It could be either way, but I think we could deal with it as a separate motion because we do have narrative in there that says the CAO has the
leeway, or it is the person who decides whether an organization or company is eligible for this. So I think it would be adjusting a different part of it. But either way, whatever we're comfortable, I think we can do it separate. All in favor of the motion that we move to a $750,000 threshold from 1 million, please indicate. Okay, opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, anything, do you want to make a motion with regard to the renewal?
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion that we renew, offer that, how should it read now, that there is the option of renewing as per council's discretion.
I think that's reasonable, because that means it will be reviewed in 5 years anyway. Any further discussion on that? Ready for the question? All in favor, please indicate. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Anything else that we need or want to add to or discuss with regard to this bylaw? Holly, please.
I'm wondering if the linear at 50 million is enough. We want to go to 75 million, just that there's some fairly small projects for that amount.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't.
Linear is at 50 million right now for a project. I'm wondering if, like, Vulcan's at 100,000, been very successful. I wonder if we want to go to 75 million. So we're still below, but a little bit higher.
Okay, thank you. Greg?
Does anyone have an example of a $50 million operation?
I'd point to Brooks Solar Development, which was at 25 million, and it comes in at 18 for assessment. So that's kind of the scale. So a project like that would then be excluded, and actually it would be excluded under the 50 million. You'd have to go lower. And keep in mind, we're talking about increase in assessment, so we have to keep in mind that if you invest $1 million, your assessment's coming in at 750 straight out of the gate, kind of a thing. So that dollar amount that we set as the threshold has to take into account all of the crazy schedules that assessors use to determine the assessed value. So when developers come and say it's going to be a $300 million project, it's great. It's 300 million less 25% to that kind of thing, right?
Okay, Greg, follow.
And what happens when it's depreciated under the assessment value? So under 50 million, let's say, yeah, it's a $50 million project. First year it's depreciated, and it falls under that 50 million. Do they still get the tax incentive?
There'd be no impact to the tax incentive agreement. So we're not following the assessment over time. We're following it that first year. Yeah, to get the agreement, it's that change in the first year.
Okay, any further questions? Are we ready? Go ahead, Dan.
Is there a motion on the table?
No.
Okay. Can we add the clause where you're only eligible for one exemption or one county provided benefit at a time? So for instance, the 2.5% if paid on time is not there for you if you're getting a tax incentive break.
Yeah, if council wanted to refer that to admin, then admin could work on wordsmithing the idea behind that, and we'll bring that back for the version for second reading.
We don't need a motion. We can just let you guys do that.
If you provide the motion, it's formal, and I've got clear direction that everybody around the table likes that idea.
Okay. Do you have a motion? Well, basically what you're saying is that you prefer that there's not more than one incentive provided by the county for any single operation, correct? Which is pretty clear to easy to understand.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting stuck, is I don't want to say the wrong legal words here and back myself up, but yeah, I think that's exactly what I'm getting at. And if we can make a motion to that effect, then you'll come back with the proper legal speak for it.
Expect okay. Ariana probably already has it written.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
I don't know. Anyway,
open for direction if somebody wants to make a motion.
All right, I'll do it. I'll make the motion that, that we get admin to add a clause to exclude developments from more than one county-provided tax benefit.
Yeah, okay, good. Any questions? Ready for the motion? All in favor of the motion that, as indicated, that's carried. Thank you. Kelly, please.
If you're ready, Reeve Dirksen, I would make a motion to move acceptance of the bylaw.
First reading.
First reading.
Okay. We have a motion to
As amended.
accept bylaw 2045-23 as amended. All in favor of the motion, please indicate. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Excellent. Let's move to item number 7.2 on our agenda, bylaw 2047-2323, land use agreement 002. Maria, please.
Thank you. The purpose of this application is to redesignate all parts of Plan 7811556 Block X Lot 1 as shown in the Schedule A from Residential Rural District to Agriculture Small Lot District. It is recommended that first reading be given to this bylaw and a public hearing be set for March 9th. The subject parcel is in Division 8, just south of the village of Dutchess, but outside of the IDP area. The applicant would like to construct an indoor riding arena and stables on the property. The parcel is 10.6 acres in size, and the applicant resides on the property. A riding arena is not a use in the residential rural district of the land use bylaw. It is a discretionary use in the agriculture small lot district. Agriculture small lot also allows for agriculture general as a use, which is defined as the raising of crops, or a raising of crops or the rearing of livestock or production of honey, either separately or in conjunction with one another, and includes buildings and other structures. The minimum parcel size in the ag small lot district is 2.96 acres. Maximum size is 40 acres. The density policy within agriculture small lot and residential rural are very similar, where they allow one dwelling per parcel and one secondary suite. So I think that's all for me.
Thank you. Maria, any questions? Neil, and then Kelly, and then Greg.
Just one quick one. What's the horse capacity of this place? Like, is he what, 10 horses, 15, 20? 10 acres isn't very much for 20 horses, if that's what it is. Okay, go ahead.
That's a good question. So the animal control bylaw that is currently being reviewed would be in effect for this parcel. So at 10 acres, they would be able to have 5 animal units, which would be 5 cows, 5 horses, or 25 sheep and goats. So they would still have to follow that animal control bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Follow up?
Yeah, this will be, I'm just trying to envision it kind of a come and go, bring your horse trailers going in and out. There's 5 horses. Isn't really enough to put up a riding arena for. Go ahead, please, Maria.
In speaking with the applicant on this one, I think they spend a lot of time at Silver Sage and they're wanting to have an arena for their own personal use. So there is no business associated with it at this point. And I suppose if they wanted to go that direction, then they would have to apply for another development permit for that business use.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, Greg?
Yeah, that was my question exactly. Is riding arena like this, a lot of times it is being rented out to 4-H clubs, for judging, rented out for people to, ride their horses, I guess. Not being a horse guy, but so I do think that when someone builds a riding arena, I think there is a bigger chance that there is a spot there for commercial use. So as long as it comes to us, if it does become that, then and the bylaw, then would this particular area, would it qualify for commercial use type of bylaw in future? Would it qualify for commercial use if it does if it does get to that point?
Go ahead, Marie. Do you have the answer to that?
Well, that's a good question. So there are some uses within the ag small lot that are not in the residential rural district, which would include, I guess, a farmer's market, ag intensive ag processing, farm gate sales. I guess if they would use the riding arena as a commercial use, it would still be considered a riding arena, just the use has changed. So there's an intensification of that building. So then they would be required to apply for that intensification.
Thank you. Just with regard to the limitation, with regard to the number of animal units, that is to be housed there or to be on the property at one time? Is there a differentiation there? Pardon me?
I'd have to review the proposed animal control bylaw, but I assume it's for animals that are housed there and that reside on that property.
Right, that would be a more reasonable limitation, I would think, because a facility like we've been talking about would often typically have more than 5 units on the property during use activity. So who do we have next? Kelly, please.
Yeah, that was the point I wanted to make. You can't stop people from coming and going from this arena, whether they're paying or not. Speaking from somebody who has a riding arena, the bylaw comes into place for animal units that are living on the property day and night. So that's your threshold that you're looking at. My question, though, different is there a mill rate change by changing this land use?
Go ahead, please.
The use of the property would still be residential with a slight agricultural component, I suppose. So the construction of this building would be assessed for that value of the building, but as far as being commercial versus residential, this would still be a residential property and a residential use.
Thank you. Holly, please.
So where's the access to this property? Legal access?
Legal access is off of Range Road 14.5. So this approach here is actually shared by both parcels.
So that's road allowance. That's why they have legal access, because looking at that, the north one doesn't have any legal access to it, right? Because it goes right above the line.
Yeah, I guess that's what it looks like there. I suppose we didn't really consider that access as far as this land use amendment goes, but that's definitely something we could look at. The next bylaw is for the parcel to the south. They're both owned by the same family, but that doesn't really matter, I guess. They should both still have legal access.
Thank you. So is there an adjustment we need to make, or is that, we're good? Go ahead, Maria.
I'd have to look, but I don't believe we really have a hammer in order to change the legal access at this point because there's no change in property lines. This may be something we could look at when it comes to the development permit stage, because a development permit will need to be applied for after this land use amendment is completed.
Okay, thank you. Follow up or you?
However, if you divided it and they put it up for sale tomorrow, there would be no access legally to that property, wouldn't it be? Right, but if they sold it, there's no access to it. Is that, am I missing something? I'm trying to understand.
Go ahead. Right, please.
I suppose historically when this was subdivided, my assumption is that it was based on a shared road allowance. So there is the potential, provided that municipal services agrees to increase the width of this approach and allow access to both parcels. But because this is historical, this looks like it was subdivided probably in 78. So that is what was decided upon at that time. This land use amendment is just changing the land use and not the property lines.
Right, so that's really outside our area of jurisdiction. We're just dealing with the land use, so, okay. Thanks. Dan, please.
Kelly asked the question that I wanted to ask, and I'm not 100% sure I understand the answer properly. I was going to ask what are the financial implications of the tax change. It sounds like there'll be no financial implications. We'll still get the same amount of taxes as before. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if they want to turn that riding facility later into, we're not talking riding facility, are we? No. Is that what's going on here? Yeah, accessory. I mean, if there's a change in use, whatever your property is being used for is what our assessor is going to assess it as. So as soon as there's a change in use, you change an ag facility to a business, commercial venture, that's the point in time that you're going to start getting hit with the non-residential rate.
Okay, thank you. Holly?
I'm just curious, for ease of this, if they had wanted to, could they also have amalgamated those two, like the lot 1 and lot 2? Because this is a single yard, isn't it? I can't really tell from the picture. So could they have amalgamated and just made it all one big change at one time, or that's too many steps? I'm just not sure we're looking at this in two separate things.
Okay. Maria, please.
Yeah, so there are two separate houses, one on one parcel, one on the other parcel, which is why it's two separate applications for a land use amendment. Anyone can consolidate really without municipal approval, but if they ever wanted to split them up and split the houses, then they'd have to go through the subdivision process again. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready for some activity on this? Someone have direction for us? Oh, Amanda, please.
I'll make that motion for first reading.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. Let's move on to item number 7.3.1, right? Motion bylaw 2048-23, first reading. Maria, please.
Thank you. So the purpose of this application is to redesignate all of parcel 7 or plan 781156 block X lot 2, which is directly south of the parcel that we just spoke about, from residential rural district to ag small lot district. This parcel is 6.8 acres in size, which would allow for 3 cows or horses or 15 sheep, as per the proposed animal control bylaw. The subject parcel is in Division 8. The reason for this proposed land use amendment is that the lot is generally used for agricultural purposes. In the future, if this property owner wanted to construct an agricultural type building, then they could, and it would allow for more agricultural related uses, such as a farmer's market, or animal small health. Not that they are proposing that at this point, but it would allow for that use in the future. And they would require a development permit for those types of uses. So it is recommended that first reading be given to bylaw 2048-23 and that a public hearing be set for March 9th.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Any questions or direction for council on this? Lynette, please.
I'd make the motion.
That we move first reading. Okay. Any further questions? All in favor, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. With that, we'll move to item number 8, agriculture services business. And we'll welcome our agriculture field and Mr. Todd Green. Welcome.
I do love the formal invitation. Thank you so much. It's not something I typically get.
You'll always get it here.
It's usually more like, oh, what's this guy got to say? Anyways, thank you for having me. The Fieldman report is, I guess, first up, if that's okay with everybody. So for January, we were a little late. I was a little late getting this one in, so we're doing this in February, but this is the January report. We're ahead of schedule, which is nice for this time of year. As we kind of stare down when all the seasonal people start, it's nice to be a little bit ahead so that we can tackle a few extra jobs. We do want to do another coyote survey, the 2023 survey, but it doesn't really look like the weather is going to cooperate. It's not ideal to do the survey during the coyote breeding season, which is kind of the third week of February. So unless we really get some snow here right away, I think we're probably waiting till December, which is unfortunate. The job ads were out. I think everybody's seen them. We have an amazing complement of people that have applied. Really excited to go through that interview process. I think we have 5 that we have to add. And Municipal Services, I think, is in the same boat, although I think we only have 1 or 2 positions. So just, yeah, really good this year. Really appreciate everybody pushing that and helping us get some applications in. Our drill repairs this year were very insignificant, which is kind of nice. I know they got the big conventional drill in there right now, but not massive. In years past, we've worked on those drills for kind of 3 weeks over the winter. When you start having to change every single disc on a machine and there's a lot of discs, it just takes time. So it's kind of nice to have a year off. We are going to do some sprayer upgrades. As you guys have read, we always make sure we ask our seasonal staff before they leave, what are some improvements we can make so that your life is easier, so that our jobs are done more efficient. And 9 times out of 10, it's always equipment adjustments, which is phenomenal because those are relatively easy and inexpensive to do. We have a few EFPs, sorry, I said that really loud. We have a few EFPs in the queue, but nobody's really asked us for any support. So excited to see people go through it on their own, and when they submit, then we get a chance to see what they've done. But happy to help if anybody out there does want to do an EFP, so you should be sure to promote that if you can. We do have a great shelter belt workshop coming together on March 13th. I know I wrote in that report 14th. That's just my fat fingers not doing what they were supposed to. March 13th, just here downstairs in the lunchroom. I think it's going to be a very personal thing because we have only got, I think, 5 or 6 people that have currently signed up to come. So cheap in terms of how much we have to pay for lunch and great information. So hopefully more people come. We are going to help out with Lethbridge County making a soil erosion video. Lethbridge has been making some amazing educational videos. If you haven't seen their YouTube channel, they've been doing a really good job of putting those together. So they invited us to help, and I think it's going to be a fun time. And lastly, it's this is the time of year when we plan next year's Ag Service Board Conference. So we try to get everything done before the spring and summer rush, and we're not backed up. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're going to be headed to the city of Lethbridge. We'll be doing some busing. We'll be having kind of hotels spread out a little bit. But I'm on the speakers committee and I'm the kind of overall chairman for the conference. And by the looks of it, we have an amazing lineup of speakers already. So it's going to be jam packed. Last year, I think it was this year, a month ago, was a good conference, but the speakers were a little bit long. So we're going to like shotgun style it, some 15 minutes, some 30, some 45s. Just really try to jam as much information as we can into 2 days. So it's a beautiful facility. We were down there last week. The old facility is where we had the meeting because the new facility is going to be done in April at the expo down there. So pretty exciting times. That's what I have for my Fieldman report.
Raising the bar on the banquet entertainment?
The entertainment, we haven't heard what we're doing there yet, but it'll be different. Yeah.
Raising the bar.
Yeah. A little bit different.
Perfect.
We're thinking the one-man band. I really enjoy those. No speaking.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Kelly.
EFP, for anybody listening, watching, can you take your acronym away and put words to that?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. The Environmental Farm Plan.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's a
Just
great...
for anybody that's listening. And then the other question that I had is for the next presentation. Thanks, Todd.
They were talking yesterday at the Alberta Irrigation Conference about the EFPs have been changed and getting more in depth. I hadn't heard that. Is there anything to that you're aware of?
There's a couple changes recently. I haven't seen the new book, and I don't know that they've released that yet. They added a biodiversity section maybe a year, 2 years ago. It's not that in depth. It just takes where your land ownership is, and they outline all of the different endangered species that might be in your area. So it's a very vast, right? The areas that endangered species live, and it just asks if you do anything to promote their habitat and that kind of stuff. So that's the only change I know of. But bear in mind, I've only really been in-depth involved with EFP for the last couple of years. So.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, you've got another question?
Yeah, I thought of it now. May I suggest Margot Redelbach to your speakers list?
We had her last time as well. Yeah. And we do have a section, because we're in Southern Alberta, of course, we want to have a little section on the history of irrigation and that kind of jazz. We weren't sure who was going to be that person yet. So there is some blanks. We know the topics, we just don't have the name filled in. And Margot was one that was thrown around. She does a great job.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments with regard to the January report or direction to accept the report? Adina, please.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept his report.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate. That is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Todd. And with that, we'll move on to item number 8.2, policy review. Go ahead.
Thank you. Is anybody getting bored of seeing policies yet? Do we need to take a break from policies? There's more legislation. Well, these two policies haven't been really looked at for a while. So it is good to review them and get feedback. The Emerson Bridge Park policy, we certainly haven't done much to it. And I think when going through it, we didn't really make any changes to the intent of the policy. We made it a little more readable, I think, and we made it a little more job specific. So because the Emerson Bridge Park supervisor is the one that follows that policy mostly, we really wanted to make sure that they had the right direction when they were going out to people and saying, you know, I'm supposed to ensure that you do this. I'm supposed to ensure that you do that. Then they have that backing. It just gives them a little extra clout when they're out and about. But otherwise, I don't think we have a whole bunch of changes that way. I know you have 3 different copies of it there, which is kind of confusing because I wanted to show you the things that we did change, but
Right, so any questions or comments about the Emerson Bridge Park? Kelly, please.
Yeah, this is where I had my notes. So although I'm not a certified grammar person, if you would like to edit, take out their designate everywhere, because or designate is all you need for English. And then the other part is in the section about generators. The generator actually can't abide by the rules. So it's use of the generator. It's just grammar.
I can see where that might be confusing for the generator. Yeah. Yeah. It didn't make, like, when you say it in that way, it makes sense. Yeah, you know, generators must abide by the quiet time, but.
And you know, some makes and models would abide and others, you know, wouldn't.
Okay, Dan, please.
I had a question about the designate as well. Is that just as simple as you asking somebody to check on something, or just a simple verbal, you're the designate now? There's nothing complicated whatsoever, right? Okay.
Okay, any further questions or direction with regard to the bylaw? Perfect policy, pardon me, yeah. Yeah, I need a motion. Neil?
I'll move that motion, I'll make that motion.
Okay, to approve. Any further questions? All in favor, please indicate. That is carried, thank you.
And just for my own clarity, I can make those couple amendments and then not have to bring it back.
Right.
Okay.
Right, yeah, policy as amended. And yeah, the motion, yeah, was as, yeah, that's what I heard.
That's what I thought. I was just double checking.
That's right, good, thank you.
Option 2.
Let's go to, 8.2.2.
All right, the pest control policy, thank you. This is a very basic policy. Under the Agricultural Pest Act, it kind of outlines that municipalities have to take active measures to control pests within their municipalities. Now, active measures can be a long list of things. This pest control policy just makes sure that we have the direction to actually do that, I guess. And that's kind of down under that other nuisances and pests. You know, we will investigate damage of other nuisances and pests under the Ag Service Board that are going to potentially, if there is a potential for the introduction or spread. So that's just, if we get a call to go out and look at white rotting garlic, that's not something that's very common. This just gives us the very basic permission to do that, to provide resources to do those kinds of things. Same with coyotes is a little more specific because we are dealing with a Schedule 1 pesticide. We wanted to make sure that our guys have the right backing to say no if they can say no, or if they have to say no, and that the procedure is kind of laid out. So if we don't have the right instances to distribute poisons, we want to make sure that our guys aren't distributing poisons. So you need to have a proper Form 7 training to sell this poison, or to distribute the poison, and you need to make sure that the Form 8 is completed. And I know that these sound very weird, but they're actually in legislation as Form 7 and Form 8. It's Ag Pest Act is very old legislation. But yeah, so not much change. It gives us a decent guide to kind of work with. And I thought it would be a nice one to do on February the 9th.
It's hard to disagree with that. Anybody? Yeah. Any further questions or comments, or a motion would be in order if we're ready for that. Dan, please.
I was going to ask about that very unofficial sounding Form 7 and Form 8, but now I know. So I'll motion that we approve the policy change.
Policy 013-23 as presented. Thank you, Dan. All in favor, please indicate. That is carried.
The next two that I bring forward are going to be more in depth, I promise. There'll be lots of conversation.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Todd. Okay, let's move on. Administrative business item number 9.1, provincial education and designated industrial requisition credits. Welcome.
That's an mouthful. So these programs are a tool for municipalities to recognize uncollectible oil and gas taxes and reduce the school and designated industrial property requisitions for the coming year. So the application that I want to make is I make that by identifying accounts that we don't anticipate being able to collect on. So the total credit that I want to apply for is $3,958 and change. And the total that I want to write off is $25,852.44. So the application requires a motion from council that I submit said application. So that's why I'm here today.
Thank you, Shannon. Any questions? Dan, please.
This is, we did this last year as well, I'm pretty sure. And there's none of those provincial liens and stuff like that that they've given us. There's no tools that the province has made at our disposal that would be useful to actually get the money from them, right? We've exhausted all our potential and now we're at this point. Is that right?
That's a separate issue. This is just before the door closes on being able to get this credit back from the province. They extended the program where they're going to at least make us whole for the school tax and the DIP requisition portion. Our collection activities will continue. And if we happen to collect on some of these, we give their credit back. But for the time being, we want the cash and we continue with our collection efforts.
Okay, thank you. Holly, question?
Did we not write off Houston Oil and Gas some of it last year already?
Yeah, these ones are all the same ones that we looked at last year. So,
yeah. Fairly routine, really. But, yeah. Matt.
Yeah, but that's a great observation because you would think, man, if these guys are bankrupt, why are we still assessing their assets? But the province continues to assess. It's on the assessment roll. We levy the tax, and then we're back here to write it off. So another thing to talk to the Minister of Municipal Affairs about.
Right. Thank you. Direction for council. Holly, please.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you, Shannon. Good to continue, or you want to take 5? Good to continue. We're going to go. Heads down. Okay. Okay, this one to take us ahead. Do you want to take count? We're good to go. Okay, let's move to item 9.2, policy review, councillors' compensation and expenses. Matt, please.
Yeah, so just bear with me as I try and pop this up on our screen here. I'm going to be able to manage. You know, we went on a field trip to a county that has 135-inch screens on their wall. Man, that was a great experience where you could see stuff. Hey, 135?
135, and it was sweet. I didn't even need my glasses on.
All right, so I'm going to assume council's been through the suggested edits here, but I did just want to pop this up and run through the review that administration did on this policy. You've got some of the history there, some of the major changes to the existing policy. Kind of the highlights is it's been a while since that monthly base rate changed for counselors. So the last change to the monthly base rate was from $700 to $1,000 per month back in 2009. So 13 years, there's been a bunch of inflation since then. So one of the recommendations I've made for this updated policy is that all rates inflate. And that makes it easier moving forward to not be in a position, because I think this is just a terribly awkward policy for counselors to entertain, right? Because you're always at risk of the public saying, well, you're giving yourselves a raise. I think anybody who's in tune with municipal government in the province knows folks don't put their name forward for municipal office as a means to get rich. That's not the pathway to that. But I think it's really important that the county stays competitive with comparable municipalities in the honorariums and compensation that goes back to members of the public that let their names stand for public office and serve. So that's where my recommendations are coming from, is comparisons of the county to other similar municipalities. I'm just going to flip through a couple of these here to show you where we stand. So all the references of where administration's pulling their data from is in the RFD. We get it from provincial published data sources. Back to that base rate, had we just inflated the base rate over the last number of years, the current monthly honorarium for the REEV would be closer to $2,000 a month instead of the current $1,500. And for counselors, it would be closer to $1,300 instead of the $1,000. So I'm recommending that you at least recognize last year's inflation, and that's actually what we budgeted for. So we budgeted for an inflation rate of 6%, and it's actually where it fell out. So a small increase for the REEV, $1,590, and for counselors to $1,060. I have put in here, you could consider directing administration to engage a third party to review the whole compensation and benefit package with a view of providing recommendations to council of what might be appropriate compared to other municipalities. But the way I look at the comparisons here, and I'm going to pop them up, I compared in each of these different categories with 5 municipalities who are immediately above us in a category and the 5 immediately below. So in every instance here, every comparative category, counties middle of the pack, and you'll see in terms of compensation, you're at the bottom of the pack when I'd kind of expect to see us in the middle. So I think you need to adjust. There should be an adjustment to that base rate beyond what I'm recommending for the inflation, but I understand that's politically sensitive. Some communities go out and they invite a committee of members at large to review it. Others, Vulcan County just recently had a third party review theirs. I think the increase was about 10% that Vulcan did last year. So equalized assessment. Why are we looking at equalized assessment? Well, it's the wealth in the region that you're responsible for managing. Middle of the pack, I know you can't see those numbers, but County of Newell is the green bar, the lowest compensated. And these are 2021 average counselor compensation and benefits amounts. Second category was geographical area, so the amount of land that you're responsible for governing. Again, you're a little bit better, bottom 3, and there's some pretty big variations in that category. Next category would be accumulated surplus. I kind of look at this in terms of assets under management, investment speak, so what's the portfolio of assets that you're responsible for being good stewards of, hopefully growing. You're at the bottom on that measure as well. Real good news story. Sorry, guys. The last one is in terms of population. And again, you're middle of the pack in terms of the population that you're responsible for representing, and you're bottom 2. So I've got some options there. I'm recommending changes to the policy. We've added a section to kind of formalize professional development, and we'll allocate an amount to each specific counselor and track that through the year. There's a list of pre-approved courses there. So if it's anything offered by the RMA, webinar, what have you, tap into that. Brownlee Law Seminar, RMRF Law Seminar. I'm trying to remember the third one. The fourth one. Elected officials program. You can just take those courses up to a max of $2,000 in a year, without having to come to council and say, hey, can I get my attendance at this webinar approved, which is typically always approved for those things. So pay attention to that list. I might not have captured everything that you think should just be pre-approved. So I have recommended option 2 here, that council approves edits to the policy, approves it as amended, and you can entertain the idea of having us kick the whole thing out to a third party to go into a little bit more depth on compensation and benefits for the county. Vulcan gave me their estimate, and I think we can get it done for around $7,000 if council wills it.
Thanks, Matt. Any comments or questions or direction for Council Neil?
After going through those, I don't have a problem defending an increased compensation. I think we just saved the $7,000, and we're just paying $7,000 because we're too shy to do it on camera. We're paying the $7,000 just because we don't want to deal with this. And I'm quite prepared to follow through with Matt's recommendations there, and we're on the bottom of everything. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Dan, please.
I was looking at some of those other counties, and that their rates are pretty high. That includes everything, including the mileage from getting around, right? Or is that an expenses that does not reflected in there?
Yeah, so each municipality, again, it's kind of like your tax incentive bylaw, right? There's a lot of creativity. So there's some municipalities that pay a higher monthly base rate, and that amount will compensate councillors for regular council meetings, your committee of the whole meetings, anything within your own division. Our model right now is you claim an hourly per diem for these meetings. So that's something that could get teased out in a third-party review as, hey, here's all the different flavors, which I haven't summarized for you. I'm just showing you where you kind of fit in these 4 categories compared to your peers. I kind of like the idea of a flat rate for more of the work because it's administratively easier for everybody. But I also, on the other hand, want to respect the history of the county and previous councils who put that hourly per diem in place, because it keeps you accountable for the hours in, right? It's hard for, I think, members of council to demonstrate hourly accountability for work done in their own division. So like I get including that in a base rate, but I think, there's variety within our own council. So we've got some councillors with hamlet advisories and some without, and the base rate's the same. That's not exactly equitable either. And I don't know that you get to a perfect system, but something that gets closer to compensating members of the public who let their names stand as councillors, compensated fairly for your time.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, mostly what I was looking at is like there's some counties that are like opportunity here where their councillors are getting $90,000. Like, does that include their reimbursement for their mileage on their vehicles? So
I think basically you've made some adjustments. You're suggesting that had there been annual adjustments to the base rate, the number, you've showed us the numbers there, but you're suggesting that we just consider our base rates for this year and that we potentially hand it off to or get a third party to review it. I like the idea of a third party review simply because these are always sensitive issues. They simply are. And to have a third set of eyes looking at it, it's a useful thing, and it's also a process that we've gone through, knowing that inevitably from time to time there's people concerned about these kinds of things. So I think given the history, I like the idea of option one. I believe there is the one you're suggesting, right? But pardon me, option two.
Yeah, I've suggested option two, assuming that maybe I didn't get all the
if there's some
professional development items that you wanted in there. Like maybe somebody thinks, oh, the economic developers conference or the irrigation conference that you just went to, that should be included in the list of pre-approved things. You know, those are the kinds of edits. Also open to edits on the rates. The way I've recommended it, it would be that $15.90 for the Reeve and $1,060 for councillors as the base rate adjustment.
Okay, thank you. Adina?
Well, excuse me, I am comfortable with what Matt has proposed. I would be uncomfortable if we paid someone approximately $7,000 and then they came back and offered us more than what Matt's, or like, I feel what Matt's proposing here is comparable. Like it, you know, I wouldn't feel good about more. I certainly wouldn't want to pay somebody to have them suggest more, is what I'm saying.
Okay, no, I mean, I'm assuming that whatever the recommendation was, we would, I mean, it's still council's decision, and I hear what you're saying, and I would agree with that. but in any case, an outside party reviewing it, I think, is not a bad idea, but that's up to council. Go ahead, Kelly.
So I'm struggling with this as well, and part of it is because it is so sensitive and personal. We have to remember, I think, in our decision here that this has been left, the base rate has been left alone since 2009. And Matt's proposal is to take effect immediately. But his recommendation, his preferred strategy is that we also engage with a consultant to do a means test or a report on our wages. So yes, it's $7,000, but it also gives us more to discuss when it comes back. It's a report of findings, and then we're not bound by that recommendation if you're fearful that it's going to be too high. We know it's not going to be too low because of the findings that Matt has provided us so far. So I like to take staff's recommendation whenever I can, and Matt's the expert in this, and so I'm on board with option two.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if I could weigh in.
Please come in. Yeah, welcome. Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah, I'm still here, although you can't see me. Yeah, I lean towards a third party as well, a consultant, just so they look at all the aspects, and this way it takes us out of our hands, and a third party is qualified to do and look at all the specifics. So I definitely lean towards a third party and recommendation from staff.
Thank you. We're not dealing with any edits at this point. So go ahead. Holly, please.
Well, can I talk about an edit?
Welcome. Please do.
Under the travel, I'm wondering if we should add in there that it's preferred an expectation that councils will carpool when able. Generally, we do that, but I think it should be in policy because that's an expense that we can keep under control in a better way if we do some more carpooling. If we're looking at hiring someone, I would assume that they would have taken into account there's 10 of us instead of other councils which has 5 or 7, because that would affect the wages greatly as well. That would be something to take into effect. That they would take into account there's 10 of us, not 5 or 7, because I mean, the less people, the more work there is, right? So I'm a little leery, as Adina is, because the benchmarks could come in higher than I think is correct.
Just for clarity, which items were you suggesting to be edited?
Under travel and sustenance, 15 talks about mileage.
Yeah, so what I've heard is administration will include a clause about carpooling should be undertaken where practicable. So we'll get, it'll sound better than that, but yeah, if the policy is approved as amended, we'll get a one-liner in there about get together. And carpooling is the best part about any event, right? That's where we solve a lot of the world's problems. Not officially, not by like motion, but yeah.
No, I'm not sure if you need to itemize that out. I think we do that when we can, but I don't think it's a matter of scrutinizing individual, because there's however many people on council, we come from different directions, and it's a meeting we need to get to. So I think practically we do that where we can anyway. So yeah. Okay, Dan?
I couldn't find anywhere in there. I know there's allowance for wait time between meetings, but sometimes you're trapped in places and you're trapped there for a long time, for instance. Can we make some kind of a clause that allows for not wait time in between meetings, but situations where you have to wait for a flight that, you know, you got an 8-hour wait, something like that, a standby time or something along that lines.
Matt?
Yeah, so that I'm glad you brought up the wait time allowance, because when I was first looking at the original policy, I was trying to create the formula in math form for your current wait time allowance. And I got to the point where I said, you know what, we're going to throw that away because that's crazy math, and you can have up to 3 hours, and you can discuss among yourselves whether 3 hours is enough, but that simplifies the calculation versus calculating the kilometers between Councillor Cobb's house and this meeting location and how long it takes to get home, and you can have up to 3 hours, because I'm pretty sure you can get just about around the entire county in 3 hours. But to your point about layovers or being in the airport, I would lean towards the interpretation of this policy saying, well, that's included in your max 8 hours a day for being at convention and travel time, or it's part of your travel time, like waiting for your bus to arrive or the taxi is part of travel time. And the way the current policy reads is you've got conference plus travel time.
Lynette, please.
I also wouldn't have a problem with that just being kind of left, and if it's a one-time thing that comes up, you discuss it and decide how to deal with it at the time, because I don't think you have those big delays in travel and such on an ongoing basis. So I don't know if it has to be specifically written out.
And I think in the context of interpretation, it's probably there. That's good. Kelly, please.
My question was around the food allowance. We all know that prices at the restaurants have gone crazy. Do you know, Matt, when those were last edited or changed?
I don't know when the meals were last changed, but it's been a while for sure. I think we're what, 15, 20, and 25, 15 for breakfast, 20.
And I just know, I mean, they're within that most times, and if we're at a hotel, we always have the breakfast that's offered or whatever, but I do think the supper menu at $25 may be low from experience.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Neil? Could you throw in comparison with the town councillors and with the EID boards? Because that's what's available in our area. And if we're comparable with them, I'm okay with that. If we're not, I think we should be in the ballpark. That's as far as I'd even want to go.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah.
I'm okay comparing to elected officials, and even though the EID board is elected, they're still private enterprise. So I don't want to compare us to any private enterprise, public only. The other question that I had was the training and development allowance. Was it stated clearly that the $2,000 was just to pay for the training and development, or does that include getting there and back?
Yeah, so hopefully it's clear enough. The 2,000 is just registration, course fees. Your time would be totally separate, accounted for separately.
Okay, thank you. So we have, we need some motions if we're going to make edits to this, or we don't. We're just, Matt's taking the edits, and unless there's, yeah, okay. Okay, any further discussion, or are you ready for?
Well, I guess I'm just confused. Sorry, Arnold.
Go ahead, Holly.
I'm looking at the Schedule A that has the rates. So we are not going to take Matt's suggestion at this point in time. We're going to pass this the way it is and then decide our step 2? Or are we going to look at doing what Matt suggested? Do we have to decide one or the other before we go forward here?
Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just clarify, because potentially the RFD might muddy the waters a little bit there. So on page 2, where it talks about if the basic inflationary adjustments had been made since 2009, the current basic monthly honorarium rates for 2023 would be the REEV at $1953.80 and councillors at $1302. So that's where you would have been. What I'm recommending on Schedule A is that we start the inflation just based off of last year. So where you were at $1,500 for the REEV, inflated 6% gets you to the $1,590. And for councillors, inflated from 1,000 to 1,060. So just to be clear, the rates on Schedule A are $1,590 for the REEV and 1,060 for the councillors, and highlighting the gap of where you would have been if they had just been inflated year over year. And that's where the recommendation of punting it out to a third party. I'd give you guys all raises. I'd love to give everything, you know. That'd be easy for me to do, but I think it is good to have an objective third party go into more depth than what I have done, just at a high level, and tease out some of the practices of, does it make sense to include your regular council meetings in that base rate? And so you increase your base rate, but decrease the per diem claims kind of a thing. I did not spend that kind of time digging into it, or comparing the meal rates, things like I didn't spend that time doing it.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I think that clarifies it. Kelly?
Yeah, it does for me. If you're ready for a motion.
I am.
I would make a motion to approve option 2, preferred strategy, that council recommend edits to the policy and approve councillors' compensation and expenses as amended, and that administration engage a third-party consultant, blah, 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 to a maximum of $7,000.
Okay, thank you. So you've changed it slightly. You've said to a maximum of $7,000. Okay. Any further discussion? Dan, please.
So what if we hire a guy and he's like, all right, here's the bill. It's going to be $7,200. We're not going to go for it.
That's what the motion says. Yeah, I guess. Any further questions? You ready for the question? All in favor of the motion, please indicate. Opposed? Okay, the motion is opposed or defeated, pardon me. Okay, further direction.
I'd motion that we take option 2 without the maximum of $7,000.
Okay, any further discussion? Neil?
I don't think it's out of line to go right to Matt's final recommendation. The $1,900 and $1,300 isn't out of line. Okay. Now, we have a motion on the floor though. Option number 2 as recommended. All in favor of the motion, please indicate. Opposed? Okay, that motion is defeated. Want to break for lunch? We need to make a decision. Any further? Okay, pardon me. We need a motion to complete this item, I think. I'm not sure we're ready for my motion because it would be $1,900 and $1,360 without the $7,000. Just we're done today. Senator can put it in paper. Take right ahead. I will make that motion then.
Okay, let's be very clear. Just dealing with a single item there, or like Matt's made some other recommendations. Matt, go ahead.
So I'll restate that motion. So approving the policy as amended, Schedule A, to show the Reeves monthly honorarium at $1,953.80, councillors monthly honorarium at $1,302.53, and no third-party review.
Okay, everybody understands that? Alan, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good, thank you. Yes, we do. Yeah. For me? Yeah. Ready for the question? All in favor of the motion, please indicate. Okay, opposed? That motion is defeated. Dan, please.
I'll motion option number 2 with a maximum of $7,000 for the third party. We'll go back with Kelly's original motion.
It was defeated.
Can we not bring it back in another motion? The same
parliamentary procedure. I haven't dealt with. I don't think so. I mean, we're circling the wagons.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we take option 2 as it's written.
We've defeated that one as well.
No, we haven't. It says at an estimated cost of approximately $7,000.
That was Dan's motion that we defeated.
Oh, I was here.
We defeated it. So. Yeah, we did.
Through the chair, we defeated my wording of maximum. Now the motion states at an estimated cost of approximately $7,000. So that changes the motion.
No, because we dealt with that motion immediately after we defeated your motion. We defeated option number 2, and we've defeated a third motion that directed us to complete this today. I'm going to suggest we break for lunch, recess for lunch.